I'm joined by Richard O'Brien, the CEO of Merlin Insurance Brokers, and throughout the day we've been discussing topics around the industry, gaps in the market and situations that we deal with on a daily basis. Richard, thanks for joining me on this location. A fantastic place to be.
Cheers, Ben.
We'll talk about your week in MIPIM in a moment, but really just wanted to jump on the point, which is issues in the market. And we talked earlier, but I'll let you describe one of the issues that you're aware of. Talk us through that.
Well, it's quite an endemic issue, really. It's like because what we do within Merlin, right? We do everything around property and construction. So we kind of look at things from every angle, whether it's the asset management companies, the consultants, the contractors, warranty providers, all that stuff. So I think because we've got a bit of a helicopter view over the market, we just understand it a bit more. So one of the things I've always thought is, and this is in conversations with people, that there's just inefficiency in construction in terms of how litigious it is and how combative it is.
Okay.
And look, our thing's always been like, we're kind of collaborative guys, right? We like working with people and we like trying to get win-win situations. So it was kind of on that basis that I thought, look, is there a way that using our contacts in the insurance market, our contacts in finance, can we somehow unlock the construction industry or make it more efficient or make it better? So it's quite a big, it's not...
So it's a big ask.
yeah. It's not the smallest of jobs, is it? So look, what this really came about with, the history of this is that I went to a seminar, God, it must be 10, 15 years ago, where they talked about something called integrated project insurance. And I thought, wow, what a cracking idea. So essentially what it means, you've got latent defects, which you guys obviously know huge amounts about, but also rolling in a bit of cost overrun and time overrun into one big wraparound insurance product, which ultimately takes away the liability, right? Okay. So, and there's obviously if you, right, chip in with any questions you want, right? But consultants wouldn't have to have PI.
Okay.
Because ultimately, if anything goes wrong, the policy covers it, right?
Yes.
So it all sounds like a fantastic dream world. And the reason that integrated project insurance never actually happened, there were 3 projects that did use it, and it was a government-backed idea and all this stuff, but ultimately the insurance market didn't have the appetite to do it. Okay, so you can guess the reaction of underwriters when I go in to see them and say, "Hi guys, do you fancy covering construction time overrun and cost overrun?"
Yeah, well, it's a very big moving target, isn't it? But
exactly, and insurance, right? We don't innovate very quickly. Changing the status quo is traditionally very difficult. Setting up new policies, because what underwriters want, they want data and they want certainty on the risks that they're going to do, right? So to ask someone to do something new and different is a real trick, and that's the job. I think, because when I talk about this product in the construction market, or I talk to my peers out here in MIPIM and things like that, everyone loves it. Everyone's like, oh, that sounds like a really good idea, because the whole point is that you can then use the product to increase quality, because you have to have then quality control over it. You have to have, like you guys got your clerk of works function. Yeah. We'd have to have a clerk of works which would be appointed by the insurers. We'd have to have cost consultants to make sure that the jobs are priced correctly, because if they're incorrectly priced, then obviously the insurance will fall back and cover it. You'd have to have like an alliance of all the developers, the contractors, subcontractors, consultants. Everyone has to be kind of working together. So we'd have to rewrite JCT contracts. Yeah. But there is precedence for this.
Well, there is, and I think I'll talk about a little bit what I know in terms of the benefits of having a clerk of works, etc. Obviously, people that watch the podcast understand that I've got a passion for quality and a passion for projects and things like that. And I think it does lean in very well to the vision that you're putting forward, in that clerk of works don't just look at paint. They don't just look at the kitchen quality. We look at the functionality. We look at the phase of construction. We look at things being in sequence and out of sequence, which builds into inherent delays. It builds into overrun. It builds into even down to procurement. If you've got a product that is essential to the needs of that project, and all of a sudden it becomes unavailable, the ability to be able to sit down with the design teams, the ability to be able to put that together and find an alternative, or look at the cost of delay, is a huge part of what a clerk of works does. And I think in terms of data input, based on what you're describing, that would be an essential part of that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that we'd need to understand the data. If I've got to try and present this to the market and get someone to put their multi-millions of pounds of capacity behind it, I need to go in with a strong argument of, okay, guys, if you charge that, you're going to make a bit of money on it ultimately.
Yeah.
So that's one of the jobs I've got to do. I've got to liaise with guys like yourself to actually try and get a decent picture of, okay, what kind of claims are going to arise from this and how can we risk manage that? Because that's all got to be done to present to the insurers to get them to get behind the products. So the clerk of works function is basically key to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's. I just think the opportunity to increase the collaboration within the construction market, I just think is fantastic, because you take away the liability.
Yeah.
Because you're taking away people's liability, then rather than when things go wrong, everyone downing tools and lawyering up, everyone's like, right, we've got a problem. How do we fix it? Right, and how much. God, how can we quantify?
I agree. I mean, the amount of money. I mean, it's an industry on its own, isn't it? But the amount of money that gets spent and the amount of time that gets used through arbitration, through mediation, through all these things, when these issues aren't covered and addressed proactively, is insane. And surely it's in everyone's interest to cover those bases pre-start. And actually, it leans really well, doesn't it, into the Building Safety Act. I mean, everything's changing now. Design and build's essentially dead. As a clerk of works, I'm delighted to hear that. There's plenty out there that are spitting at the camera right now. But it works better. Understanding what you build. I mean, I never saw any sense in building something that you didn't know how to build. Now that we've got to get to Gateway 2, and we fundamentally need to understand how this building works, how it's put together, the sequence of events, and incorporating all this safety for the end user and the construction phase, things are inherently going to get better from a clerk of works perspective. They have to, because it takes the guesswork out. And I think if I'm reading this right, you've got the same vision from the insurance perspective. Absolutely. And you want to complement that. And I'm very keen to have that conversation with you off camera about what we do as a clerk of works, how that model might fit in terms of outputs, etc. But who else would you need to speak to?
I need to get the insurers on board. So that's the big thing. So, I mean, to be honest, it's kind of like a bit of a pet project of mine, this. And in the meanwhile, I've got, Merlin itself is only 18 months old as a business. So I've got a lot of stuff on my plate. So it's kind of like, how much time can I devote to this?
Yeah.
And as the business, we are growing and we're getting more guys and girls on board, and it's hopefully giving me a bit more time just to spend on it, because there's a lot of people. I'm kind of trying to assemble a bit of a team, if that makes sense. So I've got a few guys in the insurance market that I think that have got that kind of mindset that will help us create the product. So ultimately, I think we're probably going to have to set up what's called an MGA, which is like it's outsourced underwriting. So we'd actually be the insurers. We've got to write the policy wordings. We'd have to manage all the claims. So we'd have to set it all up, and then you go to the market to get the capacity to sit behind it.
Yeah.
So, look, talking to guys like yourself would be absolutely key, so I can understand a bit more about how to present that to the market. But one of the other things I was going to mention earlier about how I visualise the product actually working. Firstly, the client is the building.
Yes.
So the policy lives with the building, and we'd want it to last like 20 years or something like that. Because that's the other thing as well. With the Building Safety Act, suddenly, the liability periods have gone up and they're way beyond what's covered under structural warranty insurance.
Yes.
And the structural warranty insurers are like, well, no, we're not changing what we're doing. So suddenly there's liabilities out there that aren't covered at the moment by insurers. And actually, one other interesting point that I think I might have that could be very interesting. I've got to have a bit more of a think about this, but I think the insurers might have exposures under the Defective Premises Act, and quite frankly, they're not pricing in. Right? So they're not pricing in the defects. Because when you look at latent defects products, 90% of the market is all the residential stuff because it's driven by mortgage lenders and things like that. So it's then trying to get that product in commercial as well. So everyone's got a latent defects policy, or the latent defects will be tied in to the overall project.
Yeah, interesting. I think there's a lot to talk about around the evolution of the industry through the Building Safety Act in terms of the longevity of the risk. You know, I think, you know, having with the LDI stuff, as important as it is, and it is very important, but, you know, it is restricted to a 10 or 12-year policy in some instances, where actually now the responsibilities under the Safety Act are for the lifespan of the building, and they're ever evolving as well.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a conversation around that there. But look, I think it's a great subject to talk about. It's obviously a very interesting thing, and I look forward to watching it evolve. And I would very much like to check in with you again and discuss progression, maybe here in a year's time.
Oh God, I'd love that. Do you know, I'd love to stand here in a year's time with something a little bit more concrete than just some ideas floating around my head.
Well, look, this podcast does weird and wonderful things, and if anyone's watching this that feels as though they've got something to chuck into the pot that might be able to help you in your decision making and the way that you're putting all this together, then there's ways that people can contact us, and we can put a link on for you as well if you feel that's
yeah, happy days. The more people I talk to in the industry, and the more it kind of informs my decisions and my thought process of how this thing could actually work and evolve, the better, right? So yeah, be all over that.
Let's see where this goes.